Hello History Optional students. I'm going to show you how the value added material is going to be. For those who are going for 2023 mains, value addition is very much required in certain areas. Because most of the time, you used to cover the basic parts, and with the basic parts, definitely average score, you will definitely get, no problem in that. To make some more value addition to your preparation, I have come up with value added material. This is exclusively for those who are going for 2023 because it will not contain the basic foundation material. Those who join foundation course, they will get all the basic material as well as value added material, everything. That is a separate set of course. But for those who are going for 2023, they cannot change their sources. Already they might have read many sources. You just follow those same sources. Don't change now because that is not wise to change the sources in the last minute. Whatever you have already prepared, prepare it very well. Only you can do it, you write answers. Test series is very, very important. You practice the test, as many tests as possible. Whatever material you are studying, just convert that material knowledge into marks, which UPSC is expecting. In addition to that, there might be some areas which most of the students feel not comfortable. For those, I am bringing this value added material. This value added material will help you to boost extra score to whatever you are already capable. For example, while we are preparing historiography, archaeological evidences, quotes, these are just a few examples of value addition. When we are studying for ancient India, with respect to historiography, we do not have much examples. Even if we have some examples, they are scattered in the existing books. I try to bring those things in one place so that students will feel comfortable and they will get some idea about different interpretations of Indian history and also the contribution of different historians. Earlier, UPSC was not asking particularly about any historian. But nowadays, UPSC in the question itself is asking about the historians, the quotes given by the historians, and they are even mentioning in the question itself the historian name. For example, Nilakanta Shastri, who worked very well on South Indian history, Chola history in particular, he has his opinion. UPSC has asked a statement given by him on Chola administration. That is why we need some kind of special attention to the historians who worked for reconstruction of Indian history. For example, I will show how this value added material will help you and how I organized these aspects here. For example, if you see the historiography, you can see the index itself. In index, you will find some ideas by looking at the index itself. Did the Indians lack a sense of history? This is very much historical debate since British time period, that we don't have any sense of writing history. But in ancient periods, we have different way of maintaining the records of the past. But the modern standard of writing history is different. If we look through the prism of modern methods, our ancient ancestors might not have similar kind of recording practice, but they have their own way of recording the historical evidences and historical developments. But how we write the question? Did the Indians lack a sense of history means we have to bring the arguments. Arguments like how Indian historians or Indians were having a sense of history, what evidence we are going to give. Beginning of modern research in the Indian history. With respect to Indian history, till the arrival of the British, we were having a different sense of history. Like I said, the modern way of looking at the history completely altered in the modern period. Even in modern period also, even in Western countries, different interpretation. For example, before the arrival of Marx, a different kind of historical writing. But those kind of writings were mainly focusing on the political aspect. Which king was very powerful? What is the extent of their empires? So mostly from the political angle. Hardly they were talking about the common people. When Marx came, Marx have completely given a different approach to the history. So Marxist history. Later on, many historians, many people adopted to such kind of way of such kind of interpretation. Those people who followed the footsteps of Marx, we consider them as Marxian historians. Those developments has a beginning in with respect to Indian history. During the British time period, when British started the administration of India, they don't know about how Indian administration was there before them. And they wanted to understand how Indians were ruling and what was the laws existing in India. And there were separate laws for Hindus, separate laws for Muslims, because India was a very diverse country. To understand all these, in the initial phases of British Empire, they started translating the Indian texts into English texts. Asiatic Society of Bengal was a particular organization was also created to understand the Oriental literature. All these measures were taken by the British to understand how Indians were living and how they have to rule. So such kind of Oriental, initially whatever they read about India's past, they felt very much happy and also they felt proud of Indian way of literature. In the initial days, they were very happy to translate Kalidasa's works into English, and they felt it very proud in translating those works. But gradually, when the new type of interpretations, when the new political philosophies emerged in Western Europe, gradually they started degrading Indian culture. And to such a level they degraded that Indians, they started saying that Indians had no civilization, we are barbarians, we don't know how to deal with people, and we don't know even, they used to say, we don't even know how to rule ourselves. Because of all these limitations, British came here to show the good path, to show the light on Indians, and they made ready to civilize ourselves. So this is the kind of interpretation. They degraded Indian way of life to such an extent that they completely degraded or discarded our traditions completely. Naturally, you will expect retaliation and response to this kind of interpretations. This is where nationalist historian interpretation started. If British say that there was no local self-government in India's history, British, they used to say. Now, nationalist historians, they used to counter it by saying that, look, our Mahajanapada time period, during that time period itself, we had a concept called republics. In your English language, you may be considering it as a republic, but in our Indian tradition, we call them as Ganasanghas. And nationalist historians used to show, see, the history of Cholas. Cholas were having local self-governance institutions. Village institutions were very dominant feature of Chola administration. So these kind of interpretations, new research started, we categorize them as nationalist historian, nationalist interpretation. In our NCERTs or R.S. Sharma, whatever books, basic books which we study for history optional also, do not have these things in detail. Even though R.S. Sharma has certain elements, we need to bring some more elements also from some other books. That is what exactly I try to bring those scattered material, which is very important, which will give you score, extra edge, I try to bring in the single place. So likewise, beginning of modern research in the history, that topic deals with these aspects. Then later, Some other historians countered even nationalist and colonialist view also. They wanted to focus on the common people, how common people were living in the ancient past or medieval past. This became Marxist historian or subaltern historian. Those things, different type. And when, due to British divide and rule policy, communalism emerged. Because of this kind of development, communalist view also emerged during freedom struggle in the Indian historical writings. So all those different ways and different people who contributed to which type of history, those things will come under this topic. I tried to bring those elements here. So colonialist, nationalist approach, contribution, so all those things you will see. For example, if I show you the material, I brought even the questions also so that you will have perfect idea how questions are coming from this particular chapter, because only previous year questions is the only prism which as a student we have to look into the mind of UPSC. In 2020, history on Alexander, now you can see a number of scholars considered Alexander as the Great, although long-term impacts of Alexander's invasion on India need to be re-evaluated. The way of asking question itself, we know about Alexander invasions and the impact of Alexander invasions on Indian subcontinent. In northwestern part, when Alexander invaded, a certain different kinds of socio-economic setup was there. Question can be asked like, what was the existing socio-economic setup during Alexander invasion time? And also, what is the consequence of his invasion? Those were common things which we generally guide. But how UPSC changing the question now, you see. A number of scholars considered Alexander as the Great, although long-term impacts of Alexander's invasion on India need to be re-evaluated. It's like Britishers always try to glorify their heroes naturally, because Alexander, for example, V.A. Smith, he was the historian, British historian. He has written almost half of the book about Alexander conquests, because they know very much about Alexander and they are proud of their Alexander because he conquered the world, and they used to take the real ownership of these exploits, and they used to consider themselves as the real inheritors of this great past. That is why, as an Indian, we have to think about these opinions which came from the colonialists. That's why UPSC is nowadays focusing on, earlier we were studying what Europeans were saying, now we have to think whether they are right or not. We have to critically analyze. That is what exactly UPSC is expecting. So critical view of whatever we were taught. Historian K.A. Nilakanta Shastri. Doubtless it was not a free state, it was any rate a state, K.N. Shastri. Just now I mentioned the historian name specifically UPSC is mentioning. Even though if you do not worry about the historian name, it is about Chola local self-government and Chola's administration. But if you bring the names of historians, definitely you will score 1 mark, 1.5 mark extra in your answer. That is all the aim of the value-added material. Doubtless it was not a free state, it was any rate a state, K.N. Shastri. Reflect upon the nature of local self-government institutions in the Chola country. Now you can see, it's about local self-government of Cholas. But if you bring the names of historians and their arguments, counter-arguments by the other historians, it makes somewhat enriched. You need not to worry about all those people, but UPSC is expecting. Earlier, they were not asking such kind of questions, we need not to worry. General answer also sufficient. Generally, you will get the number of marks also 260, 250 plus you will get. But nowadays, because of the competition from the other optionals also, if you get 300 plus marks in history, then your rank is going to be very good rank. And in fact, The history knowledge will help you in general studies, essay, interview, everywhere. In addition to those advantages, you should really get in the history optional also 300 plus marks. Then only you can take the advantage of both history as optional as well as indirect benefits of history knowledge. Now you see, in 2006, changing approaches to the history. Discuss the changing approaches to the history of early Indian history. As the new evidences were coming, new way of looking into the past changed. We need to see about them. So based on these questions, we can understand that UPSC is expecting some historiography, some historian names in the answers itself. As a result of that, now students are required to read some extra topics or extra effort is required to understand these angles. Now this is how this material will contain questions also. Once you get the question, by seeing those questions itself, you will get an idea completely how this chapter you need to handle. Next, I have given this. Did the Indians lack a sense of history? Now I have given various arguments and the material you are going to read. In addition to that, while you are reading this content itself, you will have the question also side by side, so that you will be exactly knowing for which type of question you are studying this particular material. Otherwise, once we enter into history knowledge, we don't know how to use it, still we will keep reading because it is interesting. But ultimate objective here is to convert this knowledge into marks so that you will be able to get maximum benefit out of this. That's why this is the interpretation of for this topic. Immediately right side, you will get the previous year question also, reference question. Most of the time, reference question will be from previous year. This is 1996 question, you can see. Ancient Indians had no taste for historiography. Their scholars cared more for religious, spiritual, and philosophical studies. Indian historiography is essential in Islamic heritage. Comment upon this statement with special reference to the contemporary writers and their works, which help us in the reconstruction of history of the early medieval period of Indian history. If you have this question immediately just beside you, then the way you read this content also change. It completely alter your attention towards this topic also. That is the main aspect about, that is the main intention of bringing this question, reference question also, while you are reading the question. I try to give some historian names. So, for example, Maurice Winternage, he was associate of Max Muller. Max Muller is one of the scholars who has written so many volumes of works on Indian history. He worked with him and he said Indians had a sense of history. What are the arguments? So when you bring such kind of people with their own arguments, because they are the scholars, they have done so much research, just by quoting those people will give some additional advantage to our answer. Again, if you do not remember these historians, still nothing to fear at all. Without mentioning historian names, without mentioning archaeological evidence also, 40 to 45% of the score history optional will give you. There is no doubt in it. This value added material is to take 45% of the marks to 55, 60 also. Because in the competitive world, that extra edge 5%, 10% will make huge difference. So for that effort, these names and these topics are going to be covered in the material. I try to give even with a name historian corner, so that the historian, if we read simply the historian name or opinion of some person, we don't know who is he, what is his contribution, and we cannot remember for a long time. But if you see just 3-4 lines about who is this person and what was his contribution, what kind of works he has done, what kind of work he has done, once you see this, you will be able to remember for a long time and you can quote them. Beginning of modern research in the Indian history. So likewise, the chronological order-wise, how different interpretations emerged, different works started emerging. Colonialist views on Indian history, then nationalist view will come. So likewise, whenever important historian will come, V.A. Smith. Vincent Arthur Smith was Irish Indologist, historian, member of Indian Civil Service. He was one of the prominent figures in Indian historiography during the British Raj. Following his retirement, he wrote monographs on the emperors Ashoka and Akbar. Just a few lines of description will help you to remember these historians. Otherwise, you may read historian name and the work. But if you don't know at least a few points about the historian, it becomes difficult. You will get at least so many historian names that likewise. My effort here is to make you as much comfortable as possible in dealing with these additional aspects. Next one. Nationalist approach. You will find different historians, historian corner. So different people, different Indian historians. What was their contribution? What is their interpretation about India? So likewise, this value-added material is going to be prepared. This material will help you definitely in having a different perspective about in history optional. Next one. Indus Valley Civilization. This material will not give all those things which are commonly available, like seals, importance of seals in the reconstruction of Indus Valley Civilization, some basic things which you will get, which you generally material is available, nothing to fear about those things. I try to bring those areas which generally students feel difficulty in collecting the information also related to those topics. Origin theories. There are many debates, but here the purpose of this material is to bring some scholars who worked on origin theories. Now if you see this, indigenous origin theories. Some scholars say it is developed within Indian subcontinent. Some scholars say it is not the work of Indians, the foreigners came. Because we were living in British Raj when these developments were going on. British scholars were trying to portray Indians as we are not civilized. We always took the help of outsiders, and outsiders always civilized us. So through that prism, in that socio-political condition, these historians or scholars were working on. That's why we need to see some people who has contributed to that interpretation, and those people who countered that also we needed. John Marshall, indigenous origin theories, Gordon Childe, N.G. Majumdar. So you will find some people names, and these people names will help you a lot. And in fact, these names are not from very, very high level books also. Some of them are taken from IGNO books only. You know importance of IGNO. IGNO, NCERT, these are very, very important books for our preparation. If IGNO and NCERT are covering means, definitely it is important one. I try to bring those elements which generally what we prepare is not having, and which are important for exactly for UPSC. Wherever required, where NCERT, IGNO are also not covered, I try to use other high standard books. But wherever IGNO, NCERT itself covered, and where we need some special attention, I try to bring those elements. Mackey, Wheeler, Gordon. So likewise, you will find all these different interpretations are coming together to one place, so that you will need not to worry about different historians or scholars who worked on Indus Valley Civilization. So likewise, different evidences by different people. You will find such kind of people. This is what value addition. Without these people names also, anyway you can write, no problem at all. But if you include at least a few people, definitely your answer is going to be enriched. You will get some extra edge in the competition. Irfan Habib in the latest trend. So likewise, origin theories, declining theories. I try to give the question also wherever possible, so that you will have immediate reference question, and the way you deal with the topic also is going to change once you see this question. Otherwise, you cannot go always PYQ book, and for which Indus Valley Civilization, for example, decline of urban life. Every student cannot go to the PYQ and look for what is the question were asked by the UPSC in the previous years about decline of urban life. That's why I try to bring that question, I keep here, so that while reading about the concept, you will get immediate reference there itself. I have given year also, so that you will have some kind of idea in which year what type of questions were coming. Likewise, you will find different Aryan invasion theory. For example, Mortimer Wheeler says, these are the evidences. Based on these, he said, this Aryan invasion theory, that's why Indus Valley civilization declined. This is the critical analysis. What was the point and the counter argument by the other way. This way, this table, this comparison, and the boxes will help you, one, for remembering also, second, for clarity, and you will gradually develop a new kind of writing practice also over a period of time. Next one. You can see historiography of medieval India. This is one area which is very vague, because for history optional students, Satish Chandra is very, very important book when it comes to medieval India. If you cover both Satish Chandra part 1 and part 2, more or less you will get many questions from that area. But there are certain areas like historiography of medieval India, Satish Chandra has not covered. That is why we have to look for other sources to bring those elements. And for UPSC examination point of view, this aspect is very, very crucial. Critical analysis. So this is how we were, what is the limitation of the existing historiography, and also the contributions of different historians. How we know about medieval time period. Chachnama, one example. So likewise, different ways of dealing with our Indian history. The contributions of different people, different books, and those books were highlighting what aspects. You will find Alberoni, Chachnama. So likewise, this is sample one. That's why you have seen only less information. I'm going to give you a lot of information likewise to many topics, which will help you in adding value to your answers. Next, for example, if we go to modern India, British conquest. British conquest, is it a accidental or planned one? Now, different arguments. Theory 1 says it is a planned one. Theory 2 says it is in the fit of absent-mindedness, it was conquered. Now, we will get who said it is accidental and who are the other people who countered this. And ultimately, in the critical analysis, how we have to look at this particular topic. You will find this. Question also, historian corner, if some historian name comes, if special attention is required, I will try to give that. So likewise, you will get in case of modern India. So the topics which are difficult to understand, which are not generally covered by the books most of the students read. For example, many students read basic books only due to lack of time or difficulty in reading the high standard books. They cannot cover. For those people, the topics which are required for the UPSC and also proper organization wherever it is required, I try to bring that value added material. I will show you last one in modern world. When it comes to modern world, for example, Enlightenment. The first chapter itself in modern world history, it is like in the case of ancient India, map is the first question and it requires special attention. Similarly, in world history also, the first chapter is Enlightenment. Again, it is a vague topic, but still every year questions were coming from this particular chapter. That's why we need to have special attention towards this. Different questions, how questions were coming, Rousseau, socialism, Enlightenment, like that. So that once you have questions with you before starting the question paper, before starting the chapter, you will get different view about the particular chapter. Once it is done, now you will find I try to bring different what is enlightenment, Kant, Voltaire, consequences. So whatever contributions made by various enlightenment philosophers, I try to bring that. Socialism is one area where we need special attention, because this year also socialism related came. The impact of the enlightenment, impact of the socialism, pre-Marxian socialism. Marx is, when Marx started giving the new interpretation to this idea, new idea, it was called scientific socialism. But before Marx there were some thinkers who were writing about the concept of socialism. That's why UPSC particularly mentioned about socialism before Marx and Marx. That is why rise of socialist ideas, socialist before Marx, I try to bring few case studies, few people who worked on that, and what is the interpretation given by the Karl Marx. Likewise, you will get, these are only samples how ancient India, where the pain point is there. In medieval, where historiography is another pain point. In modern India, we need to bring as many quotes as possible. I try to bring those quotes. And in old history also, the certain areas which require special attention, and again in old history also some quotes are required. All these things are compiled. You will get a single package, single booklet for all the 4 parts. This value added material will definitely boost your score in 2023 mains. This is how it looks. You will get in the material, PYQs will be there, historian names also will be there. Whenever you are reading the topic, side, you will have a reference question also, so that you will always be focused on UPSC answering. This is one aspect when it comes to value added material. Those who want to practice previous year questions in UPSC format, I have this workbook formula, History Optional PYQ workbook, paper 1, section A. This workbook contains questions from ancient India and early medieval India. Section A in paper 1, section A contains medieval and early medieval. Here I try to bring. Now, for example, this is 242 pages booklet. This is workbook. What you will get in this workbook? This is like UPSC PY. In UPSC, once you go for the examination, you will get question come answer booklet. What UPSC will give you in the examination hall is called question come answer booklet. One booklet will be given to you. That booklet contains 60-70 pages depending on the size of the questions. Question will be printed like this, left side border, right side border, left. Now space is given according to the number of marks. If it is a 10 marker question, 1 page, 1.5 page, 15 mark, 2 pages, 20 marker, 3 pages, UPSC will leave the space like this. This workbook will give you all the previous year questions. This book contains for the last 10 years, whatever came chapter by chapter. Once you take sources chapter, in the last 10 years, what are the questions coming on, all those questions I have given in this booklet. You can just practice this previous year questions booklet. So it will be like exactly like a UPSC, so that you will get the feeling the questions are also UPSC questions and the format also UPSC format. This is how you will have a sense of UPSC type of examination. You can take this booklet from the office. You will get a different perspective once you start utilizing PYQ workbook. This workbook also will help you. So total, one is value added material, and those who want this booklet also, they can get the booklet. This will help you in having complete command over history optional those who are going for 2023 this mains. Thank you. All the best.